In 2005, I completed the Family Herbalist through the Clayton College of Natural Health. And what I learned from that course is if you really want to understand herbs, you need to study them for years. I wanted to focus more on North American herbs because that's where I live. I live in Canada. And so the other thing is there was lots of good books, but I read through them, finished the online course, and then more or less left it. Herbology is something, if you really want to understand it, you're going to spend years. And I'll give you an example. A naturopath have to get their BSc, and then they'll spend at least 7 years studying after that. You can become a herbologist. You can become a herbologist online. The only thing is you need to be wary of that. Herbs can be very dangerous. You have foxglove, and if that's used improperly, that can cause death. And there's many others. There's also how much should you use. It's a great deal of learning. This book is by Richard Mabey and others. I would say is a fantastic book. I don't know if you can get it new, but you should be able to buy used copies. If you can see that. This has everything in it. This has a massive amount of common herbs. It talks about what kind of soil, talks about where the herbs come from, talks about what the herbs are used for, what's good about them, what's dangerous about them. So I'm going to say I highly recommend this book as an all-round learning. But even after you read the book, it's going to take years of trial and error, of trying to grow it, trying to make tonics, trying to make oils, understanding, is it a herb that's based on heat? Is it a herb based or called a cooling herb? There's a lot of differences. But it is a tremendous book. It's an all-around book. I am going to be backtracking and going over my course again from Clayton College to learn more about it. I'm going to limit how many herbs I learn about. There's thousands of herbs you could learn about. There's thousands of herbs all around the world. Something to consider though is you might say, oh, this is echinacea, it's great for colds. This is ginseng. There's an amount you should take, and that's going to be hard to learn. More is not always better when it comes to herbs. It's also, should you be buying that herb? Because if they say this special flower from the Amazon forest will give you a longer life, you're only going to be able to grow so many of those flowers or extract it before they're gone, before they're wiped out and extinct. And there's other things I want to talk about to do with farming and land, cultivation, crops. And an idea of this is you'll have heard about cash crops compared to food crops. A lot of times you'll hear about that from African countries where coffee, which I'm guilty of drinking, is cultivated instead of food crops. We need to, as a world, not just a country, but as a world, to understand that you can only utilize so much of the plants. It's like overfishing. If all you do is fish for cod, you will wipe out the cod. If you overfish haddock, if you overfish tuna, you'll wipe it out. There has to be responsibility. So I think looking at herbs that come from particular areas that you live in is a wiser choice than necessarily buying en masse herbs that come from another country. I'm not trying to destroy capitalism. I'm just saying there is a responsibility that there is only so much. And if you overuse the soil, you'll destroy it. So years ago, there was a problem, I understand, in Western Canada, especially, and it's very plainish. When I say plain, I mean flatland. An overuse of fertilizer. So nitrogen, phosphate, potassium. And I worked at co-op stores, co-op farm stores. I worked at a dairy farm. So I got a bit of an idea of how this works. People would go and they would buy farm fertilizer for their lawn. Farm fertilizer is immediate. So what that means is it's going to get into the soil immediately, which is not good for lawns. Lawns should have fertilizer that is slow release. Otherwise you burn your lawn, you destroy it. And working at the co-op stores, I would hear about this story all the time. Farms are supposed to have soil samples taken. I know I'm jumping around, but I want you to get an idea that herbology, cultivation, there's a big deal to this. There's a lot that has to be understood. Don't just blindly jump into it. I recommend books like this, but understand you're just scratching the surface. And it will literally take years for you to understand, and that's why I need to backtrack. Say I'm going to focus on a certain amount of herbs, preferably in the area I live in. So again, if you can read the title, and I'll put it again in the end credits, I highly recommend this book if you can get it. There are others, and I'll try to mention them later. I'll also try to talk to a naturopath, maybe farmers, try to open this up a bit. Food for thought, think about it, stay safe, stay positive. Until we meet again.